Might be from the underside. I don't know. Somewhere in this area, in this general area, somewhere right in here, we will have shocks. Okay. Welcome back to the workbench where we try to make things. And what we're continuing to try to make today is Revell's Ford FD-100 pickup. Originally, I guess, a Foose design. We're doing it a little different. Mainly the chassis. Well, actually, the chassis and the drivetrain. Well, we're doing it a lot different. But what we're working on right now is the chassis. And if you've been following along with the build, you know we notched this back in for... Let me move this over so we can see a little better. There we go. We've notched the back end for airbags. So we're putting the chassis on airbags. And if you want to get caught up, by the way, there's always a playlist down in the description. You can go back, get caught up on the video, see how we actually notched this. And I need to always remind, if you'd like to support the channel, there is a link down below where you can get this kit for yourself, build along if you'd like to. But there's always a link down there. It helps support the channel. But anyways, so we've pretty well got, I think, the airbag situation settled. I am going to rebuild these to make them cleaner. I think I'm going to try to find some nice flat washers to use for the top and bottom plates. But I think the back is pretty well together. I think I was kind of having a little discussion in the comments from the last episode. I think what I think the plan to do for the airbags is we'll have the rear airbag separate from the shocks. So basically we'll build in support back here for the airbags, and then outboard of the airbags we'll have shocks along with a track bar. And I was actually looking at this. We can look at it together. I was looking at it a little bit, how this is all going to fit in here. It's easy if I just set it upside down, because basically this, our rear end is gonna, the lowest it can sit is onto these rails. Now, obviously we could notch these inner fenders. I should say the lowest it can sit is to the inner fender here. Now we can notch those inner fenders if we need to, but if I put the wheel in and set it all the way against the fender itself, we're actually higher, I guess is the way to say it, than the rear end. So we need this rear end to actually sit just a little bit above, right about here, right above that inner fender, and that'll put the tire on, I mean, as low as it'll go, right? So what that means is we're going to need to build structure to have the rear end about right there, right? So that's pretty perfect, I think, for having the airbags pretty well sit right on these cross members that we put in. So right about there, which is, so what we can do, I think what I'll do is just flat plate across, right? And then that's what the airbag will mount to, and that'll be perfect offset. I'm pretty sure, of course, I'll double check all this through mock-up, and then we'll we'll put in a panhard bar or a track bar or whatever you want to call it, and then we'll put in shocks that'll probably mount, you have something I can point with here. We'll put in because we'll have, our airbags will be living here, so we can go shocks from here to here, you know, on those angles like that. I think off this back bar is the best, you know, just do mounting points there to, I don't know if it'd be, you know, it'd have to be outside, I would think, to, well, it'd probably have to be, might be from the underside, I don't know. Somewhere in this area, in this general area, somewhere right in here, we will have shocks. Okay, so I think that's pretty well set. And of course, we have our 4 links that'll go forward. That's what's going to support us up front here, and which is pretty much just the stock stuff that came with the kit. Now, the next thing that I really wanted to take a look at, give me our chassis back, is the front. So we need the front. So we're going to have airbags, shocks back here. Up front, I think what we're going to have to do is kind of your airbag shock or airbag strut combo, if that makes sense. So in other words, the bag, where did my airbag go? Oh, here it is. The airbag where the strut is part of the airbag. So it's you know, they would run through the center of the airbag. So we would have a shock top and bottom here, and then that's what we'll have to get to fit into. I went ahead and pulled out the bottom arm, A-arms, and which completes our our spindles, or I think what the kids call today an upright. So this is our spindle slash uprights. Now, but we'll have to get these to fit in here. Now, we did the scale math, and this is what size the airbag really should be, especially for a truck. Like, I don't want to go any smaller than this, because then I think it's going to look, I mean, obviously this is not a real truck. It's not, we could do whatever we want. I could just scale these down and make it fit in there if I really wanted to, right? Just get it to fit in. I've got a whole thing of these O-rings. I could do it much smaller and just, you know, get it to fit in there. But I just don't think that would, it's not going to be right. It wouldn't, it would not be able to support. This thing, I mean, this is not a light truck at the end of the day, right? These things are pretty heavy. So I want to do the same size airbags front and back, but I will do it kind of like a coilover, you know, an airbag strut combo. But we've got to get it to fit in here. So what, obviously what we've got to do, I guess the other thing I should mention too is this spindle actually has to go up about 1 millimeter too to get the front wheels to sit where we want them, about right there. So that all has to shift up, which all you would be doing, you know, it would be just compressed. And if this was a one, you know, the whole suspension would just be compressed up, and that's no problem. Now we do want to keep, we don't want our wheel to start dipping way in. You know, we want to keep it nice and perpendicular. So we're probably going to have to modify these A-arms, right? And specifically probably lengthen the bottom to keep that right, I think. But the real thing we need to do first, or the first, I guess, thing we need to do is we got to get this airbag to fit in here, because it needs to be back here. Can you see what I'm doing here? The airbag needs to be back here and then down in here. So basically what that means is all this rail section, and by the way, we don't need these motor mounts kind of things they got going on here. Those can just go away, because we're going to be putting a Coyote motor in this, a whole different motor. So those can go away. And then past that, we just need this frame rail section. All this, kind of basically the frame rail section. And then we've got a cross member here that bends up. Now that's going to go right to where our airbag mount needs to be. So we're going to have to cut that down somewhere in here, remove all that, and then basically do the same thing we did up front. We need to raise this. We need to notch it so that the airbag will fit in here, right? So that the airbag will fit in there, and then we're going to move, which will obviously move the mounting points of our upper A-arm. That needs to go up, and when I say go up, those mounting points are going to go up and then angle up, right? Because the suspension is collapsed, and then that'll give us our room in here for the airbag. I think it's a lot of words to say. We just got to shove this in there, right? But to do that, I think we're gonna have to pull out our old trusty, dusty piece of MDF, but what we're calling a frame table, I guess, because we need to lock in a few things, right? So let me put that back together. Let me put this back together. It just fell apart on me. We need to lock in a few things into position. Well, I cannot keep it together. There we go. So one, we got to lock the frame itself down. So we're going to go with the front, probably these front ones here, and then we'll lock in here probably with just clamps like we did last time. But we've got a few other things we need to lock into position. So I got to make sure this cross member stays where it needs to be, which includes the mounting points for the front lower A-arms. But even not more importantly, but also as importantly, we've got to put our uprights or our spindles where they need to be. So there's going to be an extra jig that needs to go on here. So because these uprights slash spindles slash whatever the heck we call these things these days need to stay on this plane. When I say this plane, I mean here, on this plane here. So they can't move out, and I can't have them move in. They need to stay here, because that's going to allow them to fit inside the fenders here, right? The tires and wheels to fit, that is. But we need it to come up. So I'm going to have to build a little jig, the world's smallest jig, that will tie into this table. basically it's just going to be, you know, it's just going to be a flat piece that runs this way that ties into the table, and then a flat piece that comes up that we put a hole in that we can, you know, put through the spindle hole here, or the, you know, where the wheel nut would go, I guess you would say, to lock that in. But I need those to be exactly the same on both sides so that we can lock those in. Then when we cut it all apart, we can position our spindles, our uprights, and then build back into that position, which would include the arms. And we want to keep the thing that could be, thing I got to think about is I think we are probably going to have to pull our lower A-arms loose, because obviously we don't want our upper A-arms to be up like this and our lower A-arms to be down. You know, we need to keep them parallel to each other. So we'll probably reposition lower A-arms, upper A-arms to that new spindle location, build in the frame rails and then, you know, position our bags in there so that we can build in our frame rails around it. Simple. Nothing to it. Yeah. So first thing I'm going to have to do, and I'm going to have the weekend to do this because we'll come back on this on Monday. Maybe on Monday. Actually, Monday we'll probably have a Mustang update, so it'll give me an extra day too to work on it. But next time we get together, I want to have these spindle jigs built out. Well, I'm going to try to just have it kind of done, I guess. But order of operations, I need to build out the spindle jigs. I need to find out exactly how high do we need the spindles to move to make this work. Build those little jigs, lock it all in, lock everything into this nice flat frame table, I guess we're calling it. And then once that's locked in, I can pull the chassis back out, pull this all back out, and start cutting loose. I don't know. Yeah, I'll have to figure out how we're going to cut loose these A-arms and move them, you know, because they're all just molded in. So we'll figure that out and then get it all moved up and frame rails out of the way for airbags. I hope that all makes sense. But that's the game plan. That's what I'm going to try to do over the weekend. Be sure to check back next week to see if it actually works, because the odds aren't good. The odds aren't good that it's going to work. But we'll see. We'll do our best. Let me know if I missed something, or if you see something I'm maybe doing wrong here. Something that I've not thought about, let me know down in the comments section. I look at them, I read them. It's helpful. Let me know if you think that's a good game plan, if that'll work out. But anyways, thank you for joining me. Hit that like button if you would, if you're enjoying this build. I'm not gonna lie, I'm having a blast with it. I love doing this stuff. This is a lot of fun to me, trying to problem solve and figure it out and then do it. Trying to figure out the solution. So hit that like button if you enjoy that too, and subscribe if you'd like to keep up. I don't know, do all those things you do on YouTube, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.